Okay, so hi everybody, welcome to this session. This is Abhyuday Agarwal. I'm a co-founder at and CEO at 𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃. Today, I'm going to have a conversation with you on how to recognize terrible advice that's actually going around while you're preparing for judiciary. Okay, now here's the trick. I'm not going to tell you specifically. I'm not going to tell you what advice is good, what advice is bad, but I know that there is a lot of advice going around for judiciary prep. How do I know this? Okay, so can you see my screen? I have just hooked up my presentation. Let me know if anybody attended my session yesterday, though. Okay, uh, because I want to ask you that how's the day been? Have you started performing some of the exercises I gave you? And do you know why I chose this topic? Why am I choosing this topic on what are the examples of terrible advice that we get? Because when I'm speaking, I've been speaking to judiciary aspirants continuously for the past 6 months. And 6 months back, we had launched a course on judiciary preparation. Okay, and I've been continuously speaking to judiciary aspirants, and I usually ask them about their plans. And almost nobody is on, while nobody is on track with their plans, everybody seems to have a plan that, this is what I will do, this is when I will do it. And then when I ask them, okay, how is it going? Most of them are completely off track. Okay, and I ask them, so what's the plan now? They're like, no, I will try to stick to my original plan. Okay, and what I realized is that they have a lot to say, but when they admit that they are not able to proceed as planned, they still stick to what they said they will do. Like this, they would say, okay, I think I need to prepare for 14 hours a day, but how much are you studying these days? 4 to 6 hours, not able to do it. What are you going to do to change about it? I'll study for 14 hours from tomorrow or from the next month. Okay, always they have this plan. Or somebody in the second year who's preparing for judiciary, I ask them, okay, how are you going about it? Still studying my subjects at college, trying to keep up with it. Then I ask them, do you know what's the kind of competition? Do you know how many vacancies are there? They realize, they accept that, okay, there are 2 lakh, 3 lakh or more candidates sitting if it's a major state. They know that the vacancies may sometimes be only a dozen. There may be only a dozen vacancies for that state. And then I ask them, okay, so do you think that, like everybody else, in view of the competition that you're going to face, if you keep preparing on your own alongside your college prep, which is what everybody is doing, you're preparing for your college exams, and there are a lakh students in India every year who graduate, and they would all be preparing like that for college exams. So how are you going to be any different? And they're like, we don't know. Okay, and some of them are going to coaching classes or have planned to join coaching classes, and I ask them, okay, how are you going to shortlist the coaching class? Again, they don't have answers to all of that, but they know that this is how I'm going to go and prepare for my judiciary exam. They haven't been able to effectively start. So what I do is I spend the first few minutes listening to them, making them see the gap, because they're stuck to what they're saying, that this is my plan, this is my plan, this is what I plan to do. Then I'm like, okay, is this happening? They're like, very clear, no, but very optimistic that it will happen. Then I ask them, how long has this not been happening? They'll say they were trying for 3 months, 2 months, 1 year, sometimes longer. How many of you over here have wanted to prepare in a certain way for judiciary, and then you thought you will be able to do it, and a few months passed by and you couldn't exactly stick to the plan you had? Let me know in chat. Did it happen for you that you couldn't stick to the plan and you still thought, no, I'll try it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, not today, I'll do it tomorrow? And this happens because we get invested in what we set out to do, but we fail to identify whether this plan itself that we have, is it workable or not, and how did we end up making this plan? Right, Shafak? Yeah. So why don't you write on chat as to what is the plan that you made, and in what way did you see it not being realized? Will be great as a learning. Okay, trust me guys, everybody has done this. We have made our idealistic plans, okay, with what we think is idealistic, and failed to stick to them. Okay. And this is the heart of the conversation right now. So what was your plan? And if you've not made a plan so far, and this is entirely new, you've not thought of committing to judiciary so far, you can let me know that as well on chat. Okay. So what I usually do then, I have to spend some time with people in the conversation, having them recognize that, hello, it's been a while since you've been trying this, or and it's not been working, or what you have is a plan that you will implement 3 years down the line, and today you are left with opportunity but no action to take. So I gave an example yesterday. Imagine that judiciary is preparing for judiciary in the 5th year or after you graduate. If you're preparing for judiciary at that time, it's like running a marathon. Okay. And you have to complete it in like 4 hours or 3 hours. Now, if you start preparing early, that's like giving yourself 5 days for the marathon. Now, somebody with minimum training also can actually run a marathon in 5 days. 8 kilometers a day, you can complete a marathon very easily. However, if you are actually wanting to run a marathon in 3 or 4 hours, that's going to kill you. Now, a lot of people who have the opportunity to start early, this is one example I'm saying. A lot of people, when they have the opportunity to start early, what do they say? I'll keep up with my college syllabus. I've not studied all the subjects. Later on, once all the subjects are over, then I will go into overdrive. What are they doing? They are basically saying that the marathon hasn't started yet for me. I'm going to start it on the day of the marathon. And they are equalizing the gap. Okay, now this is one example. I'm not saying that each one of you is in the 2nd year or 1st year. You may be in the 4th year, 5th year, in any year. But my question is that when you are unable to stick to a plan for more than a certain amount of time, even 5 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, okay, either you're unable to stick to it or you're unable to execute it. That means that there is something that needs to be done. Usually people say something needs to be done about me. I am lazy. I am a procrastinator. I am not focused. I can't study. But that's not where it's coming from. One of the conversations I had earlier was that you're losing focus because you don't have a proper study plan suited to crack the exam. Okay. But then you will say, I am talking about the people who've got a plan. Now, that's not their own study plan. That is somebody else's. Somebody else's untested study advice. That's not even a plan. You know why it's not a plan? It's not a plan because they've got some idea about how they will start. It's unexecuted, untested, unverified. Okay. So it's not telling them that I start this day, this is how much I complete by this time, and by this time I complete my full judiciary prep, then this time I'm revising, and this is how to progress day by day, and by this day, which is before the judiciary exam of this state, I've completed prep and I'm ready with enough practice. If you've got that plan and you're not executing it, there is a motivation question. But if you've not got that plan, you've got a generic idea and you've been trying to stick to it and it's not working, then the issue is somewhere else. Okay. Where is the issue? The issue is that you are operating by something you heard. How did you get here? You were operating by something you heard from somebody and you couldn't follow, and you try to stick to it. Okay, now why did you do that? Why did the aspirant, why does the judiciary aspirant do that? There is an advice going around. There are various people who give advice on how to prepare for judiciary. Some people have cracked the exam, and some people have trained others in cracking the exam, and a lot of others have passed on advice they received. Okay. Now, the thing is here that because your own advice, your own method is not giving you, you're not able to stick to it. You're not clear because you don't have your own plan, right? You don't have your own study plan. Now, whenever you want to crack the judiciary, your next best bet is listen to someone else's advice. If you're unable to stick to it, then what will happen? The advice gets reinforced and you start blaming it on yourself that maybe there is something that I don't know, I don't do properly. Maybe I can't stay focused. Like I'll give you an example. I pick up a UP land laws book and I can't follow anything. There are many family law textbooks that are there, which I open for judiciary prep, and then I'm like, I can't follow this at all. Okay, because the whole process or if they are covering, let's say, inheritance, they are not explaining how it works, and they are not then proceeding to case laws. They are not testing me. They're not telling me how do I need to look at the subject. They are just diving right into the matter from the middle of somewhere, and then citing a few cases, and then building a 500-page book and selling it in the market, and I'll read it and I'll not fall. And my conclusion at the end of the day is that, oh my God, I'm not focused. But that's not the point. There is something else going on. Okay, so what is it going on? So whether you want it or not, there is some advice that has been going around in the environment that you've picked up, especially for judiciary prep, because there's been an advice going on for a long time, because judiciary has been the most popular career choice for lawyers for the longest time. Okay, so there was practice, there's working in a corporate law firm, and there's working as a judge. Obviously, practice and working as a judge have been the longest stable career options. If you look at the history of the legal profession, corporate law took popularity somewhere around late 90s. Okay, when the and at that time it coincided with liberalization, NLUs, foreign investments coming into India, lot more jobs, lot more opportunities. So that time it coincided. But before that, there's always been, judiciary has always been there as a very popular career option. Okay, so now it's important to identify which advice is it, whose advice is it the right advice or not. Okay, however, before you get to that, you know that you've been following it. It's important for all of you to recognize that. Okay, and yeah, good, Nishi, you are saying, you've given me an example, and Shafak, I'll read out these examples for everybody's benefit. Okay, what are the examples of scenarios where you were unable to stick to the study plan, and then you see inadvertently, are you following someone's advice without having chosen it, without having consciously chosen it. Okay, so Shafak says, I thought I'll set aside the weekends to study for judiciary, but that never happened after 1 to 2 weeks as I had planned. Very good. Okay, maybe you were following an advice called work hard. Okay, Nishi, you've been planning to start but not able to do so. Something or the other keeps coming up, and I think, okay, I will start next month. Brilliant. Okay, this is standard first, second, third, fourth year until you're in fifth year, which is like the time that the marathon starts for the world, for the competition. This will keep happening. So now I'm looking for coaching, which I should enroll now so that at least I'm regular with my studies. Got it. Okay, so now think of which advice you've been following. You can check with the 𝘆𝐶𝑂 team if they can help you. Okay, that is available. But which advice have you been following? When our questions are unanswered, we pick up the loudest pattern around in our environment, which is what? You're not working hard, you're not motivated, you're not driven. Oh, you have poor memory. Okay, you're not smart enough. And we often believe that to be true because there is something else that we have experienced in our past, maybe childhood, that experience kind of reinforces itself and it appears to be true. Okay, now let's check who amongst you can identify the advice you got about judiciary preparation. It could be about when to start, it could be about how to study, it could be about which coaching to select or when to take coaching, it could be about how many attempts to give, it could be about how to study for mains, it could be anything. Okay, so who can share on chat? And you're welcome on YouTube also to write, or on Zoom, as to what is the advice you've got, okay, which you've been operating by. It's too early is one advice you may hear, and no advisor told you that. Maybe your batchmates told you that. Maybe sometimes you thought on your own that, looking at how much fun your batchmates are having, you thought that it may be too early for me to be so serious because nobody around me is that serious, right? So anybody wants to share the advice they got? And then we look at identifying the sources of advice. Okay. So I'm going to give you some advice that keeps going around. I can stay in sync with my college studies until I first cover all the subjects that are taught. Okay, what is the challenge or the problem with this advice? Do you remember if any of you studied for class 10 boards? Everybody would have, right? In many cities, like when I gave my boards class 10 in 2004. Okay, now in Bombay, there was this habit of taking tuitions, and tuitions would always go ahead of what is taught in the class. So you'd start about in the summer vacations. So you'll start in time so that you're prepared for the boards in time. I decided not to take tuitions and I decided to study on my own for 1 month. Maths, physics, chemistry, these three subjects, so that I have a lead, or I am at least equal to all the people who are going for tuitions. So I realized I could do it. After cracking 10th for a short while, in class 11, people join IIT coaching. Again, that coaching is way ahead of class. It is ahead of your even sometimes BSc syllabus. Okay, there are questions that come from BSc syllabus in the IIT JEE, which you're studying in class 11. Okay, so for an exam like that, where there are lakhs of candidates sitting with a few thousand seats, there are more seats in IIT than in judiciary. Okay, and lakhs compete. Now for that, in class 11, somebody is studying way ahead of their college. Okay, now tell me something from all that you've read about law so far. If you're in first year, second year, third year, whichever year you're in, is there actually anything that intellectually somebody in the second year, first year cannot grasp? Maybe you would have been able to grasp the law even in class 11. I don't know, it's not being tested. But a lot of your CLAT work, CLAT principles, which you may have studied for giving some competitive exam around law to get into law school, okay, a lot of that keeps getting, enlarged, repeated, deepened over your journey of law school. So do you really think that it's impossible or difficult also, or not feasible to study subjects for judiciary which are not being taught in your first year or second year? Think about it. I've just started law school. I can afford to explore a bit. What's the hurry? Next advice. Right now, this one will be reinforced most of the times by friends. Your own mindset when you see others having fun and you're not having fun. Who else will reinforce this? Your parents, if they are thinking of you as somebody too young, that can happen. Somebody who cannot make decisions for themselves, they may say that you're too early to decide that. Explore a little more. Okay, that is one way. So it could be your friends telling you this. It could be you inferring this from behavior of others. It could be coaching classes or teachers telling you that, you prepare for judiciary in 5th year or 4th year. My question is why? Right? Why exactly would you want to level the playing field when you have an advantage? And it could be people thinking you're not mature enough to take your own career decisions, or that, you're being hyperactive. Is it really that? Okay, next. So I'm giving you examples of advice. And what we will do next is we will identify that how to assess advice on your own and evaluate it. Okay, but I do want a lot of you to participate and think about this. Okay, so doing it on your own, this is a very, very big, I would literally say it's a fantasy. Okay, people want to do this, like self-study has a huge amount of pride. I did it myself. I didn't get any coaching, but we don't have examples. There are two problems with this. We don't have enough examples of people who cleared it on their own in their first attempt without coaching. Secondly, we don't have enough without any form of coaching. People take coaching at some point or the other. Then the second thing is, people say this to justify that they can do it on their own without evidence and without track record, that I will work hard and do it. Okay. And this is much more than hard work. You can work hard at cutting wood. You can work hard at decorating your house. But which direction will you work hard in is going to determine the results. You work hard in studying, and you might end up studying for many hours and not retaining anything because the material is not good enough, or the material is not taking you in the right direction. And the nearest evidence you can come up with is the fact that you've been a topper in school, where 1 in 100, maybe you were second out of 100 people, first out of 300 people. Many people say they are toppers if they're in top 5 out of their batch or their class, or top 10. That data is way too little for for telling you that you can crack the judiciary exam. If there are lakhs of candidates contesting and even 50 seats, okay, your pass rate will go below 0.001. So if you are a topper in 10,000, top person, rank 1 in 10,000, then you can say, I can do this on my own. I can accept that evidence. But there's a problem with that. Your school didn't have, or college doesn't have, that many people. Okay. Plus, you had a fixed syllabus. You had exactly clear direction on what to study and what to read. And you worked hard at that. For judiciary exams, that is missing. Clarity of syllabus, scope of syllabus, subjects are written down, but clarity, scope, width, all of that is unpredictable. Prescribed textbooks are not there. Board exams have that prescribed, right? College classroom, your college exams have it prescribed that, okay, this is the syllabus. You know that this is what was taught in the class, so whatever comes will be from around these topics. Scope is infinitely smaller. When the scope is vast, when the prescribed materials are not there, it is basically uncertain and indeterminate what will come. Okay, uncertainty increases, which means that who will succeed and who will not, that becomes very unclear. A lot of people find it difficult to perform under uncertain circumstances and where the scope of work is uncertain. The other advice you receive, all you need to do is solve past year's papers, read bare acts and guidebooks. Okay, so this is there, right? A lot of you say that, okay, I'm in my first year, second year, third year, or whatever. I'm in my fifth year, I'm solving the past year papers, I'm reading the bare acts. And after all, this is what they've asked for. I've checked all the judiciary question papers. They will ask me a case on something on something on case law, something on bare act, or some application which I will figure out from the bare act, or a textbook. And past year's papers, I will see to understand what is there, right? So technically, on the face of it, I can say this and get away with it. Okay. But really tell me that, can you read the Delhi land laws or UP land laws, or can you read the civil procedure code and understand it by reading the bare acts? Can you read a guidebook and understand the civil procedure code? If you can, great. Is there anybody who can do that? I haven't found people doing that. Okay, because the civil procedure code wasn't drafted in a way that you can understand it. People are able to remember TV shows way better than they can remember the civil procedure code. You might watch a Netflix show for 45 minutes, but remember it way better than you will remember the civil procedure code provision. Even one long provision, after having spent 1 hour on it, you may remember it more poorly than what you will remember from a Netflix TV show. So why is that? Because there is a certain science in the way that one reads, understands, and processes information to be able to learn it. It's not a guidebook's concern, and it's not a bare act's concern for that, to enable you to handle that. That job, the purpose of a bare act is to lay down the law for the country to be followed. 20 different stakeholders, whether it's the lawmaker, whether it's a law firm partner, or it's an associate, or it's a senior counsel, or it's a judge. Each category of persons will look at the law completely differently, interpret it for different purposes. Okay, how do you interpret it for the judiciary exam? How do you learn it? How do you learn to reproduce it? How do you learn to expand on it? If you look at the mains papers, they will give you questions and ask you to illustrate. Okay, a lot of this requires you, so they'll give you some quote or some excerpt from a case or a section and say illustrate and explain these. Now you will have to pull, stretch, bend your memory in so many different ways to be able to do that. And while studying, if you read it but you didn't practice those exercises, you can't do it. It's like this: when you're doing a workout, what do you need to do a split? You need to just spread and bend down, right? Spread your legs and bend down. But you can perform a split. But can you do it? How much training does it need? People do months of training to do a split, okay, in a workout. So the question is that this is not the answer, that this is sufficient to do it, because lakhs of people will be doing exactly this. How will they ensure that they get ahead? For sure, nobody is going to invent law, right? In the judiciary exam, law is there, statutes are there, case laws are there. Another advice you get: work hard and you will crack it. Okay, now it's almost like all hard work is sufficient to lead you to success. There are so many people who work hard and don't crack it. So many people who don't work as hard and they crack it. Then what do? You blame it on luck. Okay, so is it a question of working hard? Is it a question of luck? Or is it the question of the quality of your work? Right? The question the question you ask about your preparation is very important. And today you can ask your question because you've not given the exam right now. At least there is one exam coming up. After you give the exam, if you experience defeat or failure, it becomes very, very hard to objectively look at what went off. Becomes very hard to identify the gap. Today it is not so hard. Why? Because today you have the option to change the direction of your preparation. Later you won't have it. There's so much free content available. So take coaching later, consume all the free content. There's already so much material. Definitely, okay, you have all the free content available. Question is this: are you able to sequentially progress and complete your preparation? Or are you consuming content without direction? And are you being able to figure out how much you're retaining? If you're not, then there's a problem. Right? And the biggest challenge in judiciary prep is this: dealing with information overload. Okay, so it's this: in the exam, I am not going to be tested on what I don't get marks for having studied the most number of hours. I get marks for answering the questions right. So I may have whatever information I got, am I able to reproduce it? Information overload does not allow me to do that. I need the practice of reproducing, creating, writing the right kind of answers, selecting the information in my mind, absorbing the information. I need practice of that. Okay, so I need to narrow down, focus my study. If I deal with information overload, I'm going to get tired very fast, maybe in 2-3 hours, 4 hours. If I want to stick to a 14-hour or a 12-hour schedule, which is necessary if you're starting study in 4th year, 5th year, or after graduation, or giving a subsequent attempt. And if you're starting earlier, you will need anywhere between 5 to 8 hours of study from 1st to 3rd year. Okay, now if you're doing that, then you will need to, if you want to consistently do this, you need a direction in which you go forward. Then this is a very important one. ABC is not needed now means ABC could be anything. Okay. Subjective answer writing. You don't need to do this now. 4th year, you learn legal writing in college. After you clear the mains, after you clear the prelims, you can prepare for the mains. We'll give you special sessions for that. After you clear the mains, then we'll give you special interview training practice. Okay. Now I'll give you an example from class 11 SAT, scholastic aptitude test, the SAT preparation. This test is for admission to US universities. So this, one second. So if you want to study abroad after class 12, then you give this exam, and based on the marks that you get in the SAT exam, you get admission in colleges. The best textbooks, the most expensive ones, always tell you look at even GMAT textbooks. They how much responsibility do they take for your improvement? They will say that you can improve your score after reading this book by 100 to 150 points, sometimes 200 points. Okay, if you are somebody who is going to get in a 1600 SAT, if you are getting 1000, you may be able to get to 1150. If you want to get the best colleges, you will need like 1500. Okay, so how do you get that? The responsibility is not being taken by the book. Okay, now this they know over there, because over there, the liability principles are very strong. Consumers ask them that how much can I really expect to get ahead? And why do they not take more responsibility? Because from one book, from a limited set of work, which is last minute, over 2 months, 3 months, you can only expect to improve in a finite, very small amount, and they quantify that. If you do this for a long period of time, okay, that much information is not there in those books, and they admit that. So they say that if you want to improve, let's say, your reading comprehension skills, okay, or your verbal reasoning skills, then you will need to actually do a long-term study outside the scope of the book and see your score improve in 6 months or 1 year, which is where the problem is. People aren't able to do that. So you will find out that people who've been naturally reading way more content, way more information are faster. Those who've not been doing that are slower. But what's the game? The real important part is that somebody who can't do things fast needs to be able, or somebody who's not able to absorb information needs to be able to do that. And that responsibility the last minute book doesn't take. But here, what are we doing? And for judiciary, we are saying last minute. We are using the last minute content to say that we will substantively prepare from here. And what is happening is that last minute book works, how Hindu Succession Act works. Okay, how I can create a will, where I cannot create a will. If I'm reading a local laws textbook, my internet connection is unstable. Hang on. If I'm reading a local laws textbook, I can't see the connection of testamentary laws with local laws. I don't find those interconnections being made. Now, the problem when I don't get those interconnections is my brain cannot learn it. Okay, tell me if you're able to identify with these. Okay. Now, what is the connection with the advice? The connection with the advice is that you are saying that if you don't do something now and you don't give yourself a long period of time to master it, your personality, the interview test is called a personality test. How will your personality improve? You will do some cosmetic surgery. You can dress up well. You can dress up better in the last minute. But can you substantively improve the substance of the person you are? Can you improve your maturity level with respect to the legal industry? Okay, how will you do that with respect to the court process? Because you have to the interview. For the mains exam, how will you actually prepare answering? If you have 2 months to prepare, how will you actually, will you restudy all the syllabus again? That first I only studied for MCQs, so I can't write the answers now I'm going to study again. And there's such a big difference between the depth of knowledge required for prelims and mains. So if I'm studying for prelims, it's like this, that I'm preparing to run the first 10 kilometers of the marathon. That's it. I'll come first there. But what happens after that? 10 to 40 is the race also, right? So how do I do the remaining 30? Okay. Now, any advice which says that you don't need to do something right now in a competitive exam where everybody will be competing with you and you've got to get as good as possible, there's some problem there, right? Okay. So I'm highlighting the issues and not passing judgments on the advice. Okay, now what are the types of advisors you can get advice from? This is very important because both right advice and wrong advice can come from anywhere. Okay, you need to know who's giving the advice and what is the credibility of that source. A lot of times we get wrong advice from sources we trust because of our prior relationships with them in other contexts, like your parents or your college teachers or your seniors. Okay, you already trust them because they would have contributed to you in certain areas, but they may not have specifically dealt with the challenge at hand with which you are dealing with. Okay, they may not have a lot at stake. So those limitations you will have to take into account. They will give you the advice because you asked for it and they mean well and they genuinely do. But the question is that the best advice that you can get? Is that even correct? I'm going to help you evaluate it. But who are the sources of your advice? Your peers, your friends who go to coaching class, friends who don't go to coaching class, seniors who've done well, whether they've cracked the exam or failed the exam. Okay, they will give you advice when you go to them. A lot of you will, okay, because you want to get all the help possible, right? It's a difficult exam. So these are the sources of your advice. Teachers will give you advice because you'll go to them. You'll go to the best teachers who you trust and you'll say, okay, how can I crack the judiciary exam? Some of them will say, I conduct special classes for students in third year or fourth year or fifth year, and I help them revise the judiciary syllabus. So you can come for those classes when I start them later. Okay. Now, then you can have judiciary coaching classes where you get advice. Okay, first do this, then we'll talk about something else. First clear the prelims, then we'll talk about something else. Right? That can happen. Parents could give you advice. They may or may not have cracked the judiciary exam. Someone who cracked the exam in your family could, or somebody senior whom your parents regard highly, you regard highly, your role model, cracked the judiciary exam 30 years back or 20 years back, is telling you, okay, how they prepared, how he or she prepared, how you need to prepare. And that person may have started preparing in fifth year or after graduation, whenever, okay? But they're saying that, okay, you're in second year, you're in third year. Right now, it's not needed. You can think of this later on, right? And you will trust that kind of advice because, the person has cracked it. But first, identify the sources and then I'll give you some tools to evaluate that whether that advice will work for you or not, okay? But these are the sources that you will most commonly get advice from. I've written this as your own mind because a lot of times our brain either synthesizes something from a mix of everybody else's advice, peers, teachers, coaches, judiciary coaching classes, parents. You will create a synthesis of all of their advices, or you will think on your own that I have been a hard worker, I crack challenges, I do everything, so I'm going to do this on your own. So your own mind helps you based on your prior preferences in selecting which is the best advice. Okay, no problem with that, but I'm just going to give you a few tools to evaluate which advice would work and which advice won't work. All this advice suffers from personal limitations of who the advisor is. Even if I give you an advice, it will suffer from my personal limitations. Okay, which is why you're going to have the objective criteria to trust it or not to trust it. Okay, and that's why I'm giving you the criteria. Okay, based on which you can evaluate somebody else's advice. And once you find that this is working or not working, then you can choose whether to go ahead with it or not. Make sense? Okay. All advice that you get should reduce your future risk, even if today it makes your life more difficult. Okay, what does this mean? See, in a difficult exam, you want all the difficulty to come to you now. You want the difficulty today rather than tomorrow. So any advice where you're asking a question about how should I handle this difficulty, and you're being told that you can handle it later, is probably not the best idea. 1 second, I'm getting a call which I need to cancel. Yeah, right. Every advice that is, so you have to see that, is this going to reduce my future risk? In most cases, that advice is going to make your life more difficult, in the sense you will have more work to do now. Like the suggestion I give you on backup options, I always say that create a backup, create a private sector backup, but start preparing early and prepare doubly. Like if you're doing 6 hours of judiciary prep, 1.5 hours towards your private sector backup. So what is that doing? That is giving you 7.5 hours of work. What do a lot of people do when they want to prepare? They say, okay, I'm giving 4 hours to judiciary, one hour for private sector also. Okay, now what happens is that their judiciary prep gets compromised because of their backup. And sometimes their backup is also not wholeheartedly invested in. But I'm going to say wholeheartedly invest into both. So do additional work. Okay. So this has to be important, that, your life may get more, there'll be a higher standard in your life, but that would be in a direction which reduces your long-term risk. No advice needs to postpone your action in the long term. So any advice that says that doesn't give you either a clear implementability. What is implementability? I should be able to implement something. You ask me, okay, how do I start preparing for mains? Okay, now I say, okay, it'll happen, it's not a problem. Do this, you'll be cracking it. You can start it next year. Your action is postponed. Now there are 3-4 quick problems that happen with this thing. Your action gets postponed. Your life becomes comfortable. Good advice here in a competitive exam, I'm not sure, it should not never make you comfortable. Okay, it should not kill you, but it should definitely go to the end of what is possible, right? So what would a killing you advice mean? If I say sleep 5 hours a day and study 17 hours, that is crazy. Okay, but if I say study 14 hours, sleep 8 hours, take break in 2 hours, that is realistic but very hard to do. Okay, that is possible. So advice that either doesn't give you an action point right now. So you are saying, how do I do this? And somebody is saying, Abhi, you don't have to do this. Problem. Somebody is saying that, okay, don't work so much. Instead, you can do it like this, work less. Problem. Okay, of course, you will have to cap the number of hours you work, maybe to 14 hours. Humanly, beyond that might be a little difficult, right? But it should not make your life comfortable. If I study GK in my final 6 months of final year, I'm gone. Okay, because GK, English, answer writing, essay writing, judgment writing require long-term work. The advisor should have some credibility, experience, or a responsibility. Something must be at stake for the advisor. Okay, merely that the fact that you're related to them doesn't make you at stake. Okay, you will have examples of parent-child relationships and spouse relationships, where the husband advises the wife, or wife advises the husband, or parent advises the child about doing something, and they're like, I trusted the relation because I trusted your advice because of our relationship, but it was really not the right advice. Why does that happen? You have a strong personal bond and the person means well, but the person's credibility for the job or their own experience is not solid enough, and they have not got any responsibility for the failure. Like, obviously, a parent would say, if they gave you advice, you followed it, but you didn't crack it, they'd be like, but you had to work hard and you didn't, right? That's easy for them to say. But if you postponed your preparation by 2 years, person responsible becomes you. Okay. So who's going to stand something to lose? A lot of times, if you are taking a coaching class, okay, and you've paid them for it, definitely they will stand to lose. If they give you advice and it doesn't work, they have something at stake. If you're following their instructions, it's not working, you can go back to them and they'll be like, oh, they will need to do something. At least that's how we train our team, right? Our team has to do something about it. If you're following all the requirements, you're struggling. You can't follow something in the class. You can't keep up to your study schedule, and you reach out to the team. They will need to figure out how to motivate you. Okay, they'll not keep chasing you, and you keep your phone switched off. They'll not chase you like that. But there will be follow-up mechanisms, which means that there's something at stake for us. Okay, and so basically you need to find people who have something at stake when they're advising you, because if their advice goes wrong, there's going to be a problem for them, not for you. Obviously there's a big problem, but for them also it should be a problem. Okay, that's when you can see, okay, I have some criteria to trust this person's advice. It must be implementable. So there must be some action you can take, and that should be capable of being taken now. Okay, also you must have a way to identify, see, because your exam is 2 years down the line, 3 years next year. So your test of whether the advice worked cannot be after you get your results. When does that test happen? You should find some amount of mutual, see, you can take somebody's advice at face value for a limited amount of time. After that, you have to take the action and see, is there progress? Okay, so you should have a short-term method that, can I evaluate your advice in 7 days? Can I evaluate your advice in 15 days? That is very important for you. Okay, so how do you evaluate the efficacy of someone's advice? Like yesterday in the session, I said that, guys, your study plan needs to be between 3,500 to 5,000 hours to complete the syllabus. 3,500 hours if you are attempting one judiciary. Then I said 30% more time if you're attempting in 3 states, and 10% time per state for revision. Okay, so that went to 5,000 to 5,000 hours. And then there was a subject-wise breakdown of number of hours. And then I told them how to divide your day for study. And then people asked me, is there a way, like, are you saying that, coaching class can help me only and I can't do it on my own? I said that, see, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to give you some tasks to perform, and you can come to attend my webinars for 6 days. Okay, and there's a workshop that I will have on 14th, and you can come for it. Okay, so what I said to them was that if you do these tasks and you struggle anywhere, then obviously you have a way to discuss with me. But here are the tasks to do. And they got a task. They got a task of preparing a study plan, choosing the states they will attempt the exam for, and to implement one. And I showed them a model study plan. You can also see that webinar to see how to create your own study plan and practice it for a week, because on 14th we will review that and we will give you an actionable roadmap. Okay, so for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, you will have the link in the description and on the chat right now. And so this will be, 2 links will be there. One will be the link to yesterday's webinar, to workshop, which was a free workshop, and another link will be there for the 14th workshop, which is which is a paid workshop and is on 14th on building your full roadmap. Okay, but yesterday's workshop was on getting started. So you have 7 days basically, or 6 days now, to implement this and test it out for yourself. So your exercise for the advice that you've received at any point in time from anyone is to, right now also, you have to identify what is the advice I got from different sources. Okay, and you want to identify a way that I can evaluate it. The suggestion I gave was that you get started on your preparation. No postponement of action. Take action now, implement. And I told you how to implement. Choose the states. You can see the webinar and you'll identify how many hours you need to give to each subject. I told them that, they have to start preparing. They have to start testing. So they have to start practicing answer writing also from day 1. They are preparing for mains and interview. They're not preparing for prelims alone. Okay. Give them a study plan. You make your own study plan and try to follow it. Okay. But now that is the advice I gave. So something implementable. But right now you identify, does it have the utility for you? If not, if you can't test it, you can't implement it, you can't to evaluate it, then there is a question. Okay. Next step is to attend the webinars that I will conduct, which are listed below. These will be put in the description and on the chat. Asta will put it on the chat right now, on the YouTube page and on the links. Actually, I will post the links on Zoom right away. Asta will post it on YouTube. Okay, so this is what I'm conducting tomorrow. How much time do you need to spend on preparation to have a good shot at cracking judiciary exams? What are we going to look at over here? This is a free webinar. You can register. Okay, we're going to look at how much time subject wise, different categories of subjects, how to study each subject, your total study plan, because I've been speaking a lot about study plans in my earlier webinars, and I have been speaking about the total time that it takes to prepare. But now I will give you subject wise breakdowns, major subjects, minor subjects, number of hours, all of that. Okay. Then we're going to discuss what are the most common flaws in judiciary preparation, how to prepare a foolproof study plan. Okay, this is the setup now, set up in the sense that you've prepared one study plan. If you watched my yesterday's workshop, you would have, we'll give you the link. Okay, so then you can prepare one study plan. Now you want to identify, because you want to practice everything, right? This is personalized. So you want to practice if there is a common flaw, if there is a commonly committed flaw, then I want to identify that and fix that. I don't want to identify that in my 4th year, 5th year, or right before the exam. I want to identify it right away, right? So we're going to review. If you're making a study plan, please make it today, tonight, start to implement it. By 11th, you can review then with me. Before you even come to the workshop for free, we can review what is your study plan. Okay. On 12th, we will discuss how to customize your preparation for your state specific judiciary exams. So if you've chosen a state, then we have to discuss, right? What are the things to customize? What are the things? How do you go about this? So that we will discuss. On 14th, there's a workshop, and this is the link for the 14th. Okay, where we will discuss the whole roadmap. Okay, everything that one needs, all the resources, we'll discuss how to get those resources, how to plan the steps, how to map progress, where people struggle. Okay, all of that will be discussed. And on 15th also, you can register for this as well. We are going to do a self-assessment for all of you, where you can figure out where do you stand with respect to your judiciary preparation as of today. Okay, so I've given you all the links. They are there on YouTube chat as well. Okay, now I have some questions for you. How have you been? Is there any takeaway from you from this session? Are you able to consciously identify advice and choose it? See, the problem is if the wrong advice goes around, or advice you don't know the implications of goes around, then you may accidentally follow it, but you may not be able to choose it. If you can be conscious, you discard the advice that doesn't work for you and choose the advice that works. Now, have any of you been able to identify those parts which didn't work for you? That's my question. Could any of you studying for judiciary exams, did you identify the advice that, oh, it's not, I cannot test it, I cannot implement it. This person gave me the advice, but they've not helped others crack the exam. Is there any such example that you are able to come up with which applies to you? I'm going to stay on chat, and please let me know. I'm going to wait. So those online, please type your responses on chat. Then I will look at the Q&A after this. Okay. Then did you start performing, those of you who came yesterday, did you start performing the tasks that I shared with you yesterday? Go to the webinar, check the tasks and start performing. Okay. And if you started studying, please share with me, how did it go? What did you complete? What went as expected? What were the surprises that came up on the journey? All of that. Were you able to time yourself? Did you use Google Calendar? Did you slot out your time as per the time for GK? This much time for daily news analysis? Did you subscribe to daily news and try to go through current affairs? Did you time your studying of the books? Did you use a calendar tool? Did you create a customized study plan? Or if you didn't have it, I'll tell you a quick tool right now to use it. Okay, divide 5,000 by the number of years you have, so by the number of years you have to give the exam. Okay, so if you have 5,000 hours to study and you're in third year, you're in fourth year, suppose. Okay, you have 1.5 years. For every year, calculate 280 days. Okay, if you're ambitious, calculate 300 days. Okay, actually calculate 300 days. 300 days for every year, and divide 5,000. 5,000 by 300, and you have 1.5 years, so 450. Okay, so 5,000 divided by 450, that's going to give you about 11. Okay, now that's your 11 hours a day. Now what you have to do in those 11 hours, you have to figure that out. Okay, so I gave you a 12-hour study plan in yesterday's video. You can divide that and do it. But if you don't even do that, can you study for 11 hours? Question. Try studying tomorrow, day after. Today start to 2 hours of work after this session. Okay, you can watch the webinar. I share the tasks at the end of the workshop that I did yesterday. Link is in the chat and in the description. Okay, so quickly now I'm going to address the questions that you all have in the Q&A panel. Jamshed said, speak in Hindi language. I'm sorry, I've spoken in English now. For whole day is over, but whole session is over. But think of also, learning the English language. Sometimes people have a difficulty with Hindi, then they say that I can't follow if there's somebody from the south. So it'll be good if you can follow that. Anonymous attendee, you will have to ask Astha for how do you contact her. She'll give you she's in the panel. No, she's not in the panel. So you give your number on chat and she will reach out to you. Okay, you give your number on chat here and she will reach out to you and help you schedule a personal session. Okay, so quickly, everybody, is there feedback that you can use, takeaways that you can use for your preparation? A lot of you are here. Should I call you by name? Like, it'll be good to know. Arunima, Shiv, Debarati, Jagannath, Kajal, Lilath, Manasvi, Satyam, Tanya, somebody from a Vivo phone. Yeah. What can you implement from today? Because it's very important to choose and evaluate our own advice ourselves. We want to be informed customers of whatever we choose, right? And hence the important portion is to identify whose advice how do we evaluate the different pieces of advice? Do you even know that you're following somebody's advice? Yeah, quickly, can you all let me know this? Okay, so I'm going to close this session. Thank you very much. Keep studying as per a plan. Try to make your own plan. This is the time we experiment. These 6 days we experiment. Okay, so that you minimize the risks of uncertainty. Okay, all the best. Cheers. Have a great evening.